Should I wear my MAGA hat or my Reagan Bush 84 election pin? Ryan called from his bedroom.
Let's ease your new classmate said. Go with the pen,
Ryan's dad said, entering his bedroom and sitting on his son's bed. He looked at the Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro posters that Ryan had made on his computer. He thumbed through Ryan's copy of 12 Rules for Life.
Now, son, you know that kids here think a bit differently than we're used to, right?
Yes, Dad. I heard that the school mascot is the activist, Ryan admitted with eyes wide.
I'm afraid it's going to be a bit of a culture shock. We were a bit sheltered back in red state, but now that we're in blue state, we will adapt. And even though they think differently, and even though they behave differently, and even though we may disagree with them at the core of our being.
I know, Dad. Jesus loves them, so we do too, Ryan recited the family adage.
Who knows? Maybe you'll even learn a thing or two from your new peers, Ryan's dad suggested.
It'll be fine, Dad. I'm sure I will make a ton of friends. People are people after all, Ryan replied, tightening his favorite red necktie and straightening his Reagan Bush 84 pen. Ryan had been in his new school for about 7 minutes when we see him walking down the hall muttering to himself, "This school is so weird."
"Why do you say that?" drawled a student standing next to a marble bust of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Ryan hadn't realized he had been talking out loud. He spun around to see a pasty kid wearing a black trench coat. His nails were painted black, his lips were painted black, he had black eyeliner under his eyes. Like a gargoyle, he stared through Ryan. The overall effect was terrifying. Ryan had heard of Goths, but he had never seen one. The metal stud through his eyebrow looked painful. The menacing look didn't help. Of course, the dread effect was somewhat lessened when he pulled an asthma inhaler out and took a couple puffs. Ryan reminded himself that Jesus loved Goths too, and decided to engage him in conversation. "I just saw a teacher breastfeeding." "Have you never seen a person breastfeed before?" he monotoned.
"I've never seen someone breastfeed a 16-year-old, Ryan retorted with a bit more vigor than he had meant. It had been an eye-opening first few minutes in his new school. He'd been asked to join the Communist Club and the LGBTQAI+ Club, probably a computer programming language, Ryan thought, and had been told that ties were cultural appropriation. He was glad of the last one. He was afraid his culture would be highly inappropriate to those who thought differently.
"You must be talking about Bronson. Well, his parent is a teacher, so I guess breastfeeding is just more convenient than pumping. And if breastfeeding is good for a 6-month-old, why not a 16-year-old? The Goth responded.
"I don't know," thought Ryan, seeing if the logic could work. He threw open his mouth, shook his head, and said, "Nope, it's weird and gross."
"Perhaps you are too close-minded," he asked with the breathy voice of a sage.
Ryan, knowing he was not going to be swayed on this, decided to change the subject. "So, how long have you been a Goth? Oh, wait, is that the appropriate term?"
"Goth will work, but I prefer servant of the darkness, and I have been thus since time immemorial."
The student used his breathy voice again, although it came out with a bit of a wheeze, which earned another puff from his inhaler. Ryan blinked a couple times before continuing. "I see. I'm a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ, but I have only been for about a year and a half now. I was baptized when I was 15. The servant of the darkness began to walk away, but Ryan would not be deterred. "Hey, wait! Where are you going?" called Ryan, following him.
"It was getting a bit chummy back there. I prefer to be alone," he droned without turning back.
"I completely understand. I guess I will see you around. Oh, my name is Ryan, by the way. What's yours?" "My name is Garrett."
"I mean, you can call me... What I meant was... Damn, get lost," said Gary, flustering, his steely effect faltering.
"Okay, bye, Gary. See you around," said Ryan, waving before walking off and checking his schedule. First period, Sheconomics. Second period, Women's Studies. Third period, Gender Studies. Fourth period, Cultural Studies. Fifth period, Lunch. Sixth period, STEAM. Seventh period, U.S. History. Eighth period, Spanish. Not a lot of time for academics, Ryan said to himself. All right, let's go to econ, assuming that was what was meant by the first entry on his schedule. Ryan entered the room and took a seat next to a young lady with spiky pink hair. He smiled at her and earned a raised eyebrow in return. When she saw his Reagan Bush '84 election pin, a look of disgust crawled across her face. Ryan shifted his gaze to the front of the classroom where the day's PowerPoint presentation was being projected, My Buddy Mao. Ryan zoned out for several minutes as he took in his classmates. His desk was butted up against several others in what was known as a collaboration clump. The other students in his clump stared at Ryan as though trying to figure out what he was. Ryan, doing the exact same thing, hoped he was more subtle as he tried to figure out whether the person across from him was a boy or a girl. The beard and the pink lipstick were throwing him for a loop. Ryan remembered he was supposed to be listening to the teacher and tuned back in to hear the following about Chairman Mao. He was a poet, ended imperialism, and even promoted women's status in China. What a great guy! Ryan couldn't help it. He knew he should be working to fit in. He knew that correcting the teacher was disrespectful. He just couldn't help it. He stood up beside his chair, as was the custom at his previous school, and waited to be called on. And we see here that communism brought forth a time of prosperity for the He sputtered to a stop. Yes? Did you need something? He asked when he noticed Ryan standing beside his desk clump. Yes, sir. Ryan was losing his nerve. Ryan knew Mao Zedong's communism had cost millions their lives, and his autocratic rule was on par with Hitler, and had even had the added cost of sacrificing one of the personal liberties Americans hold most dear, freedom of religion. Ryan realized his teacher and the class at large were staring at him. He was just standing there, absently straightening his tie. Where's the restroom, sir? Ryan's econ teacher stared at him a moment longer, took a deliberate sip from his Bernie Sanders as my spirit animal coffee cup, and spoke. First of all, Sir is my mother's name. Second, there is a multi-pan omni-sex restroom at the end of the hall. You do look a bit tense. Take your time. Don't force anything. His teacher, whatever his economics teacher name was, trailed off as Ryan was already out of the classroom. He got to the restroom, or at least he hoped it was. There was a symbol on the door that may have been half a man crossed with half a woman in a wheelchair holding a helium balloon. Ryan was pretty sure this was meant to indicate that this bathroom was open to all. He didn't understand the helium balloon. Either this was the birthday bathroom, or progressive signage engineers felt everyone would be happier if they were inclusive and had a helium balloon. Inside was stranger still. There were 8 urinals at varying heights, 8 stalls, and one toilet that appeared to be half stall and half urinal. Ryan was about to use this one purely out of curiosity when he decided against it and went to the mirror instead. Why didn't you just tell the class the truth about Mao? Ryan asked himself. Ryan heard a toilet flush. He had thought he was in the restroom by himself. An elderly woman wearing a custodial uniform walked out of the stall, looked at him with curious eyes, plucked a chin hair in the mirror, and left without washing her hands. Ryan's father had made him watch an episode of Ally McBeal once to inoculate him against certain types of liberalism. Ryan had secretly thought in his hormone-addled mind that a co-ed bathroom would be sexy. It turns out, Dad was right again. Ryan washed his hands and went to dispense a paper towel when he realized he didn't know how the apparatus worked. It looked like a paper towel dispenser, but didn't have a slot for the towels to come out. He noticed a QR code on the front, however. He gingerly stuck his wet hand in his pocket and slid his phone out. He scanned the code, which prompted a text that read, Wet hands are better than ravaged lands. To learn more about how you almost raped Mother Nature, click here. Standard messaging rates apply. Ryan did his best to dry his hands on his slacks without making it look like he had incorrectly used the stall/urinal contraption. He then straightened his tie, adjusted his pin, and finger-combed his hair. He looked in the mirror one more time, already feeling better. He marched back into class, threw the door open, and announced, Sir? Mr. Ma'am? Are you saying you're not a man? Ryan shook his head, getting back on track. Anyway, class, Chairman Mao was a despot and a murderer. Communism is bad. It hurts most of all those it means to help and punishes those that provide for society. Ryan turned back to see that his teacher's face was red. Get out of my class or I'll show you a real despot. This is a place of learning, a place of discussion, a place of dialectics. There is no room for hate. Detention. A student near the front of the class piped up, Sir, We don't have detention at this school. It's an aversive discipline style. Ryan's teacher guffawed for a moment and, then, a thought occurring to him, yelled, "Meditation! Report to meditation, where you can think about your actions and how they were hateful." Wow, it was his first day and he had already gotten meditation. Ryan followed the sounds of gongs and trickling water until he found the meditation room. He was handed a large pillow to sit upon in the dimly lit room which smelled of incense. Ryan plopped down on the pillow with a little less ceremony than seemed to be appropriate in a room such as this. He wasn't sure how to meditate and was immediately uncomfortable. He felt like he was going against his religion. Was this some sort of covert conversion to Buddhism? Ryan thought. He shook his head. He was being ridiculous. If Jesus walked in, he would probably plop down on a pillow, probably with more grace and respect than Ryan had shown, and love on everyone here. Ryan looked around the room at the other students in there. Other than the kid secretly vaping next to the burning incense, the other students seemed to be trying to achieve something. One young man had a concerned look on his face as he squeezed his eyes shut. A young woman that Ryan had seen in the hallway seemed at peace, but a tear had rolled down her cheek, leaving a glistening trail. Ryan decided something. He was going to break a rule. He was going to pray. After all, when he thought about it, meditation was the second half of prayer. Once you talk to God, you might as well stop and listen for a time to see what he has to say. Ryan bowed his head and prayed to himself. He prayed for clarity and boldness. He prayed for the other students in the meditation room, including the one vaping something that smelled like a candy fart. He prayed for the rest of the class period. After leaving meditation, he caught his teacher while the students switched classes and apologized for his disrespect. If Daniel could serve his captor, King Nebuchadnezzar, with respect, Ryan could treat Mr. Wow, I really need to learn his name, thought Ryan, with respect.